All right, let's talk about fasting, but not the kind of fasting that I'm normally talking about. I want to talk about juice fasting. And I want to really explain the science and truly get down to brass tacks as to why fructose is totally different and why juice fasting is not the way to go. I have to make sure that I give you the science on it because there are way too many people out there that are saying that juice fasting is the way to go and that juicing your fruits and veggies is 100% the best way to get your nutrients. Totally calling nonsense on that right out the gate. So I'm going to talk about some stuff. First thing I want to talk about is the fact that when you are on any kind of juice fast, the calories are just flat out way too low. And some of you might be watching this saying, okay, Thomas is always talking about fasting. How can calories be too low? Well, it comes down to this. Okay, when you're fasting, you're looking at a hormonal situation. Okay, you're not eating food at all, so you're getting a hormonal response. When you're juice fasting, you're not really fasting. You're juicing and you're just consuming too low of calories. I would rather you consume 0 calories than go through the day consuming like 600 calories and trying to get by, especially when you take into consideration some of the other things I'm going to talk about. So a big difference there. So the next thing I want to talk about is the protein situation. Now, when I'm talking about protein, you know that I'm generally not the biggest fan of consuming tons of protein. It's just not my thing. But there is a fine line that we need to look at. Too little protein is going to make it so you're never satiated. Okay? You're going to end up not having that ghrelin inhibition response. Now, what that ultimately means is when you consume just a little bit of protein or just enough protein, your body is not going to be producing copious amounts of ghrelin, which means you're going to be satiated. Juice fasting makes you hungry all the time for a multitude of reasons. There was actually a study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that took a look at protein consumption. Okay, what they found was really interesting. They found that when you went from consuming 15% of your daily calories from protein up to 30%, that those people generally consumed 447 less calories throughout the course of the day. 447. Okay, if you were to do that for a week, you would lose more than a pound. You would lose, I mean, it's crazy, just by simply increasing the protein amount, but not changing your calories. 30% of your calories from protein is perfectly acceptable in my book. That's still low protein compared to what most of the fitness community and the health community really touts. That's still low protein by many standards and perfectly cool for a ketogenic diet as well. So I definitely wanted to make sure that you knew that. All right, now we need to talk about something else. We're talking about fiber. We're talking about the good stuff, okay? The stuff that's on the skin of these apples and these pears, the stuff that we truly want. Okay, now fiber is great. Okay, it's great because it gets you moving, it gets you the bathroom situation rolling, but that's not even what I'm talking about. What I actually want to talk about is the antioxidant effect of the fiber. So what we don't always realize is that most of the antioxidants in these fruits, okay, these fruits that we're always touting the awesome benefits of, they're tied into the fiber. The antioxidants are tied into that fiber. So what happens when you juice it? You get fructose, you get sugar. You get sugar and you get some colored water that has a little bit of antioxidant activity, whereas most of those antioxidants are bound to the fiber. I truly don't care about the fiber as far as the bathroom situation goes. That's a topic for another day. What I care about is the fiber and the antioxidants that are bound to it. Okay, now I get to talk about the one that I've been proud to talk about and that I get a lot of haters about. This is the world of fructose metabolism. So put on your seatbelts because I'm about to take you down a bumpy road of learning exactly what fructose is doing in your body that no one else really wants you to know. All right, here it goes. Fructose is metabolized super differently than anything else in the body. Glucose can be used by every single cell in our body. Fructose can only be used by liver cells. So what does that mean? That means 100% of the metabolic burden whenever you are actually having fructose is falling on the liver. Okay? You have this banana, it's all having to tax the liver. The other cells aren't using it, the liver's using it. Now, glucose on the other hand, not saying you should go out and eat a ton of glucose, but glucose ends up having 20% of the metabolic load land on the liver. 80% lands on the rest of the body, the other cells. So do you put all that energy to your liver? Well, here's the other problem. The liver can only handle so much at a given time. Glucose is also used super quickly. But the important thing that you need to know, since fructose is not used as quickly, it gets turned into free fatty acids and triglycerides extremely fast. The liver takes the fructose, and what it doesn't use, it turns into free fatty acids. Those free fatty acids turn into triglycerides and store in the liver, leading to a fatty liver. But it doesn't just lead to a fatty liver. It doesn't just lead to a metabolic disorder that we don't really even think about. No, it can lead to fat accumulation directly in the belly. That's exactly the issue we're always complaining about, because the first place it's going to go is stored in the liver and directly around the liver, right where we don't want it. Now here's the other thing. Fructose, it loves fat. What the heck is that supposed to mean? It means whenever you're consuming these pears, whenever you're consuming this apple, or anything like that, it's seeking out fats. Why? Because it turns into something known as activated glycerol. Activated glycerol is what is known as something that is lipophilic, another word for loving fats. Lipo, fat, philic, attracted to. Basically, that activated glycerol takes free fatty acids, turns them into triglycerides, and causes your body to store them. So if you're already eating a higher fat diet and then you're consuming copious amounts of fruit, yeah, you can run into a serious problem. But as pertaining to fruit fasts, you're just loading up with fructose that your body can't handle. Now, there's some science to even back this one up. This is a more recent study that was conducted at the University of Urbana-Champaign, and I actually just totally got my rocks off on watching this one, because what this one looked at was the metabolic difference when it came down to metabolizing glucose versus fructose. So they took mice, okay? And with these mice, they split them into two groups. With these two groups, they gave 18% of their calories from either fructose or 18% of their total calories from glucose. So what we were trying to look at was what was the difference when the calories were the same. Well, the mice that were fed 18% of their diet from fructose ended up having significantly more weight gain and were significantly more sedentary. Calories were the same. Only difference was fructose versus glucose. Do the math. Now, one last thing before I let you go, and this is the big one. And I'm going to break it down into an analogy that makes a lot of sense. Fructose requires a unique delivery system called an active transport chain. It utilizes what's known as the GLUT2 and the GLUT5 transport system. Here's a little bit of how it works. If this is a bus, and this is another bus, what's going to happen is you consume the fruit. It's going to tack on to what's called the GLUT5 transport system, which is a small bus. It can only hold a little teeny bit. This bus is going to drive on down the road to the intestinal tract, okay? And then it's going to stop at what's called the enterocyte, okay? An intestinal cell. Then it's going to pick up a ride on the GLUT2 transport system, which is a slightly bigger bus. This GLUT2 transport system drives it directly to the liver. Let me explain the situation. Fructose has to ride on a small confined bus, which means we can only hold so much at a given time. In fact, most people can only hold between 5 and 50 grams of fructose at any given point in time. The rest gets stored as fat. But to add insult to injury, it has to stop at a bus stop. It has to take 2 different stops. It goes GLUT5, stops at the intestinal cell, and then hops on GLUT2. So what happens to the remainder? The remainder floats around, turns into activated glycerol, turns into free fatty acids, gets stored as triglycerides, and ultimately makes us fat. So juice fasting ends up riding a funky little bus that doesn't get anywhere directly, whereas glucose is going to metabolize a lot faster. Now, I've talked enough about fasting. I've talked enough about fruit fasting, and I've talked enough about scaring you out of fruits. The thing is, don't be afraid of fruits. They're not a bad thing, but you have to use them in moderation. And don't give me the nonsense that someone that has been consuming fruit all their life is skinny. I would like to see a cross-section of their liver, because I can almost guarantee that they're going to have a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease that causes a very big problem. So as always, make sure you keep it locked in here on my channel, and if you have any ideas for further videos, make sure you post them in the comment section below. I'm sorry if I rained on your parade by telling you that you need to chill and juice fasting, but I just want to give you the science. So I will see you in the next video.